The Galactic Union's council chamber was a place of grandeur, designed to reflect the unity of its member species. Its vast dome shimmered with holographic constellations, and its polished floor mirrored the towering forms of diplomats from across the galaxy. Today, however, the chamber was a battleground of words, with tension thick enough to cut. At the center of the chamber stood Krozik Thar, ambassador of the Vriex Dominion. Towering over the human delegation, his chitinous armor glistened under the chamber's lights. The Vriex were a species bred for dominance, their culture steeped in conquest and submission. Thar's sharp mandibles clicked as he delivered his ultimatum. "You humans are trespassers," he growled, his guttural voice echoing in the chamber. "You expand into territories that now belong to the Dominion. Surrender your colonies and swear fealty to the Vriex, or we will grind your pitiful species into the dust." The other delegates watched in uneasy silence. Most had faced the Vriex before, some through war, others through coerced treaties. Few dared to openly challenge them. Seated at the human delegation's table, Ambassador Rebecca Connors remained calm, her hands folded neatly in front of her. Beside her stood Colonel Alex Briggs, his broad shoulders and weathered face a stark contrast to Connors' diplomatic poise. Ambassador Connors leaned forward, her voice steady. "Ambassador Thar, humanity recognizes no such claim. The colonies in question were established in neutral space. Your demand is both baseless and unacceptable." Krozik Thar's mandibles spread in what could only be described as a predatory grin. "Unacceptable? You dare dismiss the will of the Dominion? We are not bound by your feeble galactic laws. Submit now, and perhaps your species will survive." Colonel Briggs, who had been silent until now, chuckled softly. The sound drew the attention of every delegate in the chamber. Krozik Thar turned his gaze to the human soldier. "You find this amusing, human?" Briggs straightened, his eyes locking with Thar's. "Yeah, a little. You've got the whole big scary alien act down, but your threats? They're pretty weak." The chamber erupted in whispers, the audacity of the human soldier shocking the other delegates. The Vriex ambassador's mandibles twitched in anger. "You mock the Dominion?" Thar hissed, his voice dangerously low. Briggs stepped forward, his expression calm but with an edge that sent a chill through the room. "I'm just wondering, are these threats the best you've got? Because where I come from, we've dealt with worse. And you're not scaring anyone here." The tension in the chamber was palpable. Krozik Thar loomed over Briggs, his claws flexing as if contemplating violence. But this was the council chamber, and even the Vriex were bound by its rules. Ambassador Connors interjected, her tone sharp. "Colonel Briggs speaks out of turn, but his point stands. Humanity will not abandon its colonies, and we will not submit to tyranny." Thar's mandibles clicked in irritation. "You have made your choice, then. Prepare for annihilation. When the Dominion's fleets arrive, you will beg for mercy." Without another word, the Vriex ambassador stormed out of the chamber, his retinue of armored guards following close behind. As the session adjourned, the human delegation returned to their quarters. Connors turned to Briggs, her calm demeanor cracking slightly. "What were you thinking, Alex? You could have escalated the situation unnecessarily." Briggs shrugged. "Rebecca, the Vriex don't respect diplomacy. They respect strength. If we backed down or tried to placate them, they'd see it as weakness. Sometimes you've got to let a bully know you're not afraid to punch back." Connors sighed. "And if they call your bluff?" Briggs's smirk returned, though there was no humor in it. "It's not a bluff. If they want to test us, we'll make damn sure they regret it." Later that night, as the council chamber's lights dimmed, whispers spread among the other delegations. Many questioned humanity's resolve, wondering if they had the strength to face the Vriex. Others, quietly impressed by Briggs's defiance, began to reconsider their perception of humans. The Vriex had issued their ultimatum. Humanity had refused. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of both. In his private quarters, Briggs prepared for what was to come. Staring out at the endless expanse of stars, he muttered to himself, "They have no idea what they've started." The Vriex Dominion was known across the galaxy as an unstoppable force. Their fleets, forged from the strongest alloys and armed with cutting-edge weaponry, had subjugated countless worlds. When Ambassador Connors rejected their ultimatum, the Vriex wasted no time making good on their threats. Reports flooded in within days, A massive VREX armada was heading straight for the contested colonies. Dozens of sleek, angular ships, each bristling with plasma cannons and energy lances, advanced like a predatory swarm. Their target, Nova Atlas, the largest and most vulnerable of humanity's new colonies. The colonists panic. On Nova Atlas, the atmosphere was tense. Civilians scrambled to prepare for evacuation, but the planet's defenses were minimal at best. Humanity's expansion into space was still in its infancy, and colonies like Nova Atlas relied on the protection of distant outposts and a few small defense fleets. In the colony's central hub, Governor Elena Marks addressed a crowd of terrified citizens. "We are not alone in this fight," she assured them, her voice steady despite the rising fear in her own heart. "Earth has sent reinforcements. We will stand together and survive." Behind her, a live feed displayed the incoming VREX fleet. The crowd's unease grew as the sheer scale of the armada became clear. Fort Hyperion, humanity's line in the sand. At Fort Hyperion, humanity's nearest military outpost, Colonel Briggs and his team analyzed the situation. The fort was a formidable installation, but its resources were stretched thin. Its fleet consisted of a few destroyers, corvettes, and a single battleship, the Horizon's Wrath. In the command center, Briggs stood before a holographic display of the VREX fleet. Lieutenant Nadia Valdez, his second-in-command, summarized the grim numbers. "The VREX outnumber us at least 5-1, Valdez reported. "Their firepower is superior, and they're already within striking distance of Nova Atlas. We don't have the resources to hold them off indefinitely." Briggs studied the display, his jaw tight. "What about reinforcements from Earth?" Valdez shook her head. 2 weeks out, at best. The room fell silent. The VREX would arrive in less than 48 hours. "Then we hold the line," Briggs said firmly. "A strategy of survival." The VREX relied on overwhelming force to crush their enemies, and they expected humanity to crumble under the pressure. But Briggs knew that wars weren't won by brute strength alone. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its technology, it was its ability to adapt. "Here's the plan," Briggs announced to his officers. "We're going to make them think we're weak and disorganized. They'll underestimate us, and that's when we'll hit them where it hurts." The strategy hinged on deception. Smaller ships were tasked with laying mines in the asteroid field near Nova Atlas, creating hidden kill zones. The Horizon's Wrath would stay back, acting as both a deterrent and a last line of defense. Meanwhile, the corvettes and frigates would employ hit-and-run tactics, drawing the VREX into traps. Valdez frowned. "If this fails, the colony will be defenseless." Briggs's gaze was unyielding. "It won't fail. The VREX advance." When the VREX fleet arrived in the system, their confidence was palpable. Ambassador Thar observed the battlefield from the bridge of the Dominion's flagship, the Kralix Reaver, a colossal dreadnought armed with enough firepower to level a planet. The humans scatter like insects. Thar sneered as he watched the smaller human ships dart around the battlefield. "Destroy them." VREX ships surged forward, their plasma cannons lighting up the void. The human ships seemed to retreat in chaos, but in reality, they were luring the VREX into the mined asteroid field. The first explosion caught the VREX off guard. A cruiser veered too close to an asteroid, triggering a chain reaction that tore through its hull. More mines detonated, sending shockwaves through the VREX formation. "Ambush," one of Thar's officers hissed. Thar's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Fools. Regroup and press the attack." But the human ships didn't give them time to regroup. Corvettes darted in and out, targeting vulnerable engines and weapon systems before retreating to safety. The VREX, unused to such guerrilla tactics, struggled to adapt. The first victory. Hours into the battle, the VREX had suffered significant losses. Smaller human ships outmaneuvered their larger vessels, and the minefield continued to claim victims. On the bridge of the Horizon's Wrath, Briggs watched the chaos unfold with a mix of satisfaction and determination. "They're overextending," he noted. "They think they can brute force their way through." Valdez nodded. "Their formation is breaking apart. Should we press the advantage?" "Not yet," Briggs replied. "Let them exhaust themselves. Then we'll hit them with everything we've got." The VREX were learning, albeit slowly. Their remaining ships began to consolidate, focusing their firepower on breaching the human defensive line. The Horizon's Wrath fired its main cannon, a powerful energy weapon, to hold them at bay, but it was clear the battle was far from over. Ambassador Thar, furious at the unexpected resistance, glared at the battlefield. These humans, they dare challenge us? I will tear their colonies apart myself if I have to. In the distance, Briggs smirked as he heard the intercepted transmission. Good, he muttered. Keep underestimating us. The battle for Nova Atlas was just beginning, and humanity was far from finished. The VREX fleet pressed on with relentless fury, their ships closing the gap between their forward assault line and the colony of Nova Atlas. Plasma fire and energy lances streaked through space, a deadly light show visible even from the planet below. The human defensive fleet, though vastly outnumbered, had so far managed to hold the line through cunning and precision. The VREX's overconfidence. On the Kralix Reaver, Ambassador Thar observed the battlefield with growing frustration. Despite their superior firepower, the VREX had yet to crush the human defenses. The human smaller ships darted in and out of the fray, exploiting the VREX's bulkier, slower vessels. Asteroid mines continued to claim more VREX ships, and their forces were stretched thin. Enough of this. Thar bellowed, slamming a clawed hand onto the command console. Order all ships to focus fire on the Horizon's Wrath. Crush their flagship, and the rest will fall. The Kralix Reaver's officers relayed the command, and the VREX fleet adjusted their formation, converging on the Horizon's Wrath, the largest and most heavily armed ship in the human fleet. It was a logical strategy. The destruction of the Horizon's Wrath would cripple humanity's defense. On the Horizon's Wrath, Colonel Briggs watched the VREX ships shift their focus. A faint smile played on his lips. They're taking the bait. The counteroffensive. Briggs activated the fleet-wide comm channel. All units, fall back to defensive positions around Nova Atlas. Prepare to execute Phase 2. Human ships began to retreat in what seemed to be disarray, drawing the VREX closer to the planet. On the surface of Nova Atlas, Governor Marks and the civilians watched anxiously as the battle moved dangerously close to their home. Are they retreating? A panicked colonist asked, staring at the live feed of the battle. No, Governor Marks replied, her voice steady. They're leading the VREX into a trap. As the VREX pushed forward, they entered the final layer of the minefield, where human engineers had placed the most devastating charges. Simultaneously, the Horizon's Wrath powered up its experimental weapon, the Pulse Lance, a massive energy cannon capable of punching through shields and hulls with terrifying precision. Ready the lance, Briggs ordered. Target the Kralix Reaver. Valdez looked at him, her face tense. If we fire at this range, they'll know it's coming. That's the point, Briggs replied. They need to see what they're up against. The Kralix Reaver in the crosshairs. As the VREX dreadnought bore down on the Horizon's Wrath, the Pulse Lance unleashed its first shot. A beam of concentrated energy sliced through space, striking the Kralix Reaver's shields with a thunderous impact. The shields buckled but held, for now. On the VREX flagship, chaos erupted. Their weapon, it's breached our outer shields, a technician shouted. Thar snarled, his mandibles flaring. Return fire. Destroy them before they can fire again. VREX ships opened fire, their plasma cannons targeting the Horizon's Wrath. The human flagship weathered the barrage, its reinforced armor and countermeasures absorbing the brunt of the assault. But it couldn't hold indefinitely. Briggs activated the comms again. Corvettes, engage flank operations. Frigates, maintain suppression fire. Let's box them in. Human ships executed the maneuver with precision, forming a crescent-shaped line that funneled the VREX ships directly into the mine zone. As more mines detonated, VREX cruisers and frigates exploded in fiery bursts, their forces further depleted. The turning point. With their numbers dwindling and their flagship under siege, the VREX fleet faltered. On board the Horizon's Wrath, Briggs gave the final order. Fire the Pulse Lance. Full charge. The lance fired again, this time with devastating accuracy. The beam pierced through the Kralix Reaver's shields and struck its hull. The massive dreadnought shuddered, explosions rippling along its frame as its core systems failed. The once imposing vessel began to drift, its weapons silenced. On the bridge of the crippled Kralix Reaver, Thar stared in disbelief as his flagship crumbled around him. How are they doing this? He snarled. They're just humans. The VREX retreat. The destruction of the Kralix Reaver sent shockwaves through the VREX fleet. Without their flagship, their command structure collapsed. Smaller VREX ships broke formation and began retreating, abandoning the battle. Humanity had won. On the Horizon's Wrath, The crew erupted in cheers as the remaining VRIX ships fled. Valdez turned to Briggs, her expression a mixture of relief and admiration. "We did it, sir." Briggs nodded, his face calm but resolute. "We held the line. But this isn't over. They'll be back, unless we make sure they think twice." As the human fleet regrouped and the people of Nova Atlas celebrated their survival, one thing became clear: humanity wasn't just a fledgling species trying to survive in the galaxy. They were fighters, capable of standing their ground against even the most formidable of foes. The VRIX Dominion, known for their arrogance and unchecked aggression, had learned a harsh lesson: humans weren't prey, they were predators. The aftermath of the battle was a mixture of relief and grim determination. The skies above Nova Atlas were clear once more, but the wreckage of VRIX ships scattered through the void served as a stark reminder of the cost of survival. Humanity had achieved a decisive victory, but Colonel Alex Briggs knew this was just the beginning. The message. In the command center of Fort Hyperion, Briggs stood before the central comm console. The remaining VRIX forces had retreated beyond sensor range, and humanity had earned a moment to regroup. But Briggs wasn't done. He had a message to send. "Open a channel to the VRIX Dominion," he ordered. Valdez hesitated. "Sir, do you think they'll even listen?" Briggs smirked. "Oh, they'll listen. They need to hear this." The comm officer nodded and activated the broadcast. A moment later, the holographic visage of Krozikthar appeared, his mandibles twitching with rage. The VRIX ambassador's once imposing demeanor was diminished, his pride clearly wounded. "Human," Thar snarled, "you may have won this skirmish, but you have only delayed your extinction. The Dominion does not forget, and we do not forgive." Briggs crossed his arms, his tone calm and unwavering. "Extinction? Forgiveness? Is that all you've got, Thar? Because from where I'm standing, your fleet's in pieces, your flagship's a wreck, and your soldiers are running scared." Thar's mandibles clicked furiously. "You dare mock the Dominion? You?" Briggs cut him off. "Damn right I dare. You came into our space, you threatened our people, and you got your asses handed to you. If you want to come back for more, you're welcome to try. But let me make one thing clear, you'll regret it even more the second time." The connection terminated before Thar could respond. The room was silent for a moment before a slow ripple of applause broke out among the staff. Valdez turned to Briggs with a grin. "You have a way with words, sir." Briggs chuckled. "Words are just the appetizer. Action's what they'll remember." The VRIX reconsider. Far away, in the heart of the VRIX Dominion, the aftermath of the battle rippled through their high command. The loss of the Kralix Reaver and the retreat of their fleet were unprecedented. The Dominion's leaders, once confident in their superiority, were now faced with a grim reality. Humanity was not the weak, insignificant species they had assumed. "They are unpredictable," Thar admitted to the Dominion Council, his tone grudging. "And their tactics, effective. They fight with a ferocity we did not anticipate." The council murmured in discontent. One of the elder VRIX spoke, his voice a low growl. "Then we must proceed with caution. Perhaps the humans are not prey but predators in disguise." A new reputation. On Nova Atlas, the mood was celebratory. The colonists, once gripped by fear, now walked the streets with renewed pride. The planet's defenses were reinforced, and humanitarian efforts were underway to rebuild what had been damaged in the conflict. Governor Marks addressed a crowd of colonists in the central hub, her voice carrying hope. "Today we proved that humanity will not be bullied, will not back down, and will not be broken. This colony stands because of our resolve and because of the men and women who fought to protect it." Briggs stood in the background, watching the speech with quiet satisfaction. He wasn't one for the spotlight, but he knew the importance of moments like these. Humanity needed victories, not just on the battlefield but in spirit. Valdez joined him, a rare smile on her face. "Think the VRIX will be back?" Briggs didn't hesitate. "Maybe. But if they are, they'll think long and hard before trying something like this again." The Galactic Union takes note. News of humanity's victory spread quickly across the galaxy. Delegates in the Galactic Union, many of whom had written off humans as naive and inexperienced, now saw them in a new light. Words like tenacious, dangerous, and resilient were whispered in council chambers. The Trezor delegate, a crystalline being who had been neutral during the conflict, addressed the Union. "The humans have demonstrated an understanding of war that rivals even the most seasoned civilizations. Perhaps their place in the galaxy is more significant than we first believed. Others, however, were less pleased. The Zlekri's diplomats sneered during a closed session. They are dangerous. If the Vriex could not subdue them, what does that mean for the rest of us? A warning and a promise. Back on Fort Hyperion, Briggs received a private message from Earth, a commendation from High Command. While humanity celebrated, Briggs remained pragmatic. He knew the Vriex would regroup, and other species might see humanity's defiance as a challenge. As he stood on the observation deck, gazing at the stars, he reflected on the battle. Humanity had faced extinction before, fought against impossible odds, and survived. This was no different. Valdez approached, holding a datapad. "Sir, the fleet's ready for resupply." And the governor asked if you had a message for the colony. Briggs nodded. "Yeah. Tell them this, humanity doesn't start fights, but we finish them. And if anyone else wants to test us, they'll regret it." Valdez smirked. Short and sweet. "Just like me," Briggs replied with a rare grin. As humanity's ships patrolled the skies above Nova Atlas, the galaxy was left with a lasting impression. Humans weren't just survivors. They were fighters, dangerous, determined, and impossible to ignore.